Building a brand new property is literally one of the funnest things I've ever done personally, and I think one of the great parts of life if you're lucky enough to ever get a chance to do it. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about 10 reasons to consider building a brand new property in Queensland. I know building isn't everybody's cup of tea, and I know it can be overwhelming and a bit stressful if it's your first time around, but having built 6 properties myself over the last 5 years, it's such a joy to be able to share some of the things that I've learned throughout that process with you in today's video. So the first thing that I love about building in Southeast Queensland right now is if you go out there and you buy the right piece of land at the right price, and then you go out there and you get the right quality build at the right price, you can actually do really well from a short-term equity perspective. In fact, some of the builds that I've done recently, I've been able to make $20, $30, $50, $100,000 of equity on the day I've bought the piece of land and signed the contract with the builder, because I've known that, you know, not everybody in that market is prepared to go out and buy land and build and create that finished product. So it can be a really, really effective way if you buy at the right price and build at the right price to manufacture some short-term gains. Now, I'm not saying that chasing short-term money is why you're building or why anybody should be investing in property, but it is really nice to get some of your deposit back as soon as properly, not property, and to reduce the overall costs associated with your build, to reduce your loan to value ratio, and to reduce your risk perspective in the marketplace a little bit as well. So short-term equity is one thing that I love about buying up here and building up here. Another thing is when you build a brand new property, obviously you're going to attract, if it's in the right area, a higher quality tenant who will generally pay a higher rental return. And that's one of the reasons why I've started to build properties. Having bought a lot of established properties before that, I think I've bought and built 11 properties now over the last 9 years. What I've realized as an investor and a homeowner is I'm just so sick of maintaining older properties. And so I've moved more towards a brand new property approach for my properties, just because it reduces the maintenance on the property and also dramatically increases the cash flow, because you're attracting higher quality tenants who are prepared to pay a premium for a brand new property. Now, I'm not talking about going out there and just buying whatever in a greenfield estate where everybody's doing the same thing. I'm talking about finding a really good estate or small development or single piece of land in a great established suburb close to the cities or close to the beaches, and really making it your own type thing, you know, and going out there and finding the right product and creating that for the market. Now, the third thing I love about Queensland is that if we look at the history over the last 50 years, Brisbane, for example, has gone up on average, according to Homely's analysis of CoreLogic and RP data, as well as the Australian Bureau of Statistics data, has gone up on average by around about 9.7% per year, which is higher on average than Sydney and Melbourne over that period of time. And if we look at the last 30 years, Brisbane has gone up on average by well over 6% per annum according to RP data. So what I love about looking back at the past is that the history of performance has been very, very solid in Sydney, in Melbourne, and in Southeast Queensland. And if we look forward to the future, we know that 25% of Australia's population growth is expected to occur in Sydney, 25% in Melbourne, and 25% in Southeast Queensland. That is the future job growth, the future income growth, and the future population growth over the next 30 years according to the Australian government. So that's one of the major reasons I like it. It's had good long-term performance in the past, and because of the population, job and infrastructure growth, should have consistent long-term performance over time, which as investors and as home buyers, we really want a property in 15 or 20 years time to be able to double in value. That is a big reason why we're investing, or why we're spending money buying our own home as opposed to renting if we can afford to do that. So another thing that I like about Brisbane, the fourth thing, is the timing of the current market. Now, what I look at personally as an investor and as somebody who's helped our clients buy over $300 million worth of property now is the history of performance and timing associated with the cycle. So right now, according to Heron Todd White's property clock, Sydney is in the declining phase. Obviously, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see that property prices there have dropped by about 5% in the last year. Melbourne's now in the top of market declining phase too, where property prices have dropped between 1 and 3% in the last year. But Brisbane, on the other hand, is a market that has sat flat, completely flat for the last 10 years and is at the rising stage of the cycle according to Heron Todd White. So that's kind of where Sydney and Melbourne were 2012, 2013, as opposed to where they are at the moment. So it's a nice stage of the property cycle to be looking at buying, and I know a lot of people watching this will have made good money in Sydney or Melbourne or the regional markets surrounding there, or maybe have good savings in their and good equity in their own home and are really starting to educate themselves on the Queensland market and going, should I buy an existing home? Should I build brand new? So we've done other videos on just the market in general and existing homes versus brand new. But what I like from a brand new perspective or an existing perspective is the timing makes a lot of sense. The fact that it's been flat for so long but has such a strong history of performance and is really in that sweet spot capturing a lot of population and job growth at the moment up here too. The fifth thing which I love about all brand new property is none of us love to pay huge amounts of tax. And so with a brand new property, you get those depreciation benefits. Now, regardless of what the Australian government do in the next election, according to the policy that I'm hearing about at the moment, they're going to keep depreciation on brand new properties in place, even if they move it away completely from existing properties. So that benefit of depreciation and the tax benefits associated with holding a brand new property are significant. Now, let me give you an example of two properties I've recently bought. The first one I built for $240,000. I got a company in Australia, one of the well-known depreciation companies, to write up a report for me for $600, and I was able to save on that property $4,500 to $5,000 every single year since I owned that property in the last 3.5 years in tax. Now, that is such a huge amount of money to save. The office that I'm living in now is another property that I built, and I built that property for a little bit more, I think $375,000. Now that property, when I got the depreciation report in place, has enabled me in the last 2 years since I picked it up to save around about another $8,000 to $11,000 per year in depreciation just on that property. And then I get rent from those properties. On top of that, I get the tax benefits from owning them. So it puts the property in a really nice position cash flow wise, which isn't the reason we go build brand new, but it really does help at tax time, get you a nice savings buffer in place and also make the cash flow with what you hold significantly better. Now, the sixth thing that I wanted to talk about in this video is about the joy and the fun associated with creating the right product for the market. Now, in some suburbs in Australia, the right product looks like a 800 square meter piece of land with a nice big 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom home on it. In other pockets, the right product looks like a 3-bedroom townhouse on a 150 square meter piece of land. In other parts like Queensland, it could be a combination of those things. A product that I really like up here right now is a house where you go and build, a 3 or a 4-bedroom home with a 1 or a 2-bedroom granny flat at the same time. And I'm building one of those on one of the beachside suburbs in Brisbane right now, which I expect will get a great rental return when it's completed. And hopefully long term I can own that property outright and get all the benefits of the things that I just mentioned before. But the cool thing about building brand new is you are literally starting with a blank canvas. You're starting with a piece of land and then you're creating the right product for the marketplace, as opposed to buying what was the right product maybe 15, 20 years ago type thing. So you can design it so it's got the right amount of living space, the right size kitchens, the right size bedrooms, the right size functionality for the home, the right size al fresco and garden design and backyard design, and really incorporate all these things that we know that really add value to your property long term into what you choose to do today. And that takes me on to the next point, part 7, which is really about the cool thing about building brand new is you get to choose the right piece of land in the right location for whatever strategy it is for you. Whether it's your home, whether it's a knockdown rebuild, whether it's a vacant piece of land in an established suburb, or, you know, like I've done with my family before, a smaller site or a larger site as well. So there's so many different opportunities there to really nail that piece of land. But what I love about building brand new is you're the one in control of the design and the suburb selection and the piece of land that you effectively end up buying, and you can really set up your future financially as a result of buying the right thing as well. Now, the eighth thing that I wanted to talk about is the fact that Southeast Queensland is the most competitive building market in Australia, and that means you get high quality product built at lower prices in shorter periods of time, basically better than anywhere else in Australia right now. So I've personally and through my clients worked with 11 different builders in Southeast Queensland in the last 7 years. And what I've found from all of those different experiences is that there's great builders that build a really high quality product at a great price in a really good time frame. And then there's everything the same as every business in life in between that. You know, you've got builders that take a long time to do it, builders that overcharge and see interstate investors or novice investors and first time people building a long way away and they take advantage of them. You know, you have people building really low quality product as well. So what I've found is that there's two builders up here that I really trust, that I've worked with personally, that create a really high quality product at a great price, and they build it in a very short period of time, which is kind of the three things I'm looking for. The other major thing I'm looking for is probably a fixed price contract, because as you know, you can really come unstuck if you don't get that contract in place and tight before you actually move forward. So that's another huge reason for investing up here at the moment. The marketplace is so tight. The labour rates are still very low compared to Melbourne and Sydney in comparison for the same trades, and therefore it makes the cost of your project a lot more feasible and have a much better return at the end of it. Now, another thing that I love about the Southeast Queensland or Queensland marketplace at the moment is the demographic stuff happening up here right now. So we know, according to Core Logic, that there are more Australians moving into Queensland and Southeast Queensland than anywhere else in Australia right now, including Sydney and Melbourne. And as the Macquarie Bank predicted a year ago, there are now a lot of people exiting out of the Sydney, Central Coast and Wollongong markets that are very unaffordable from a rentability and a livability perspective, and they're moving up into Queensland now. We've got the fastest population growth rates into Queensland that we've had since I moved up back in 2007, and at that time, that was the last time we got any meaningful price growth. But on top of the increase in population, we're also getting more international investors targeting Brisbane. We've also, for the first time in a long time, got an undersupply of inner city apartments in Brisbane in comparison to Sydney and Melbourne. That supply problem that was there for the last few years has now dried up, according to Michael Matusik. You've also got wages in Brisbane, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, rising so dramatically that the average household income in Brisbane is now higher than the average household income in Melbourne. You've also got property prices that are significantly more affordable than other places. So in terms of the income to price ratio, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth and Adelaide, as well as Canberra, are all now more expensive and unaffordable to buy in than Brisbane. And think about that for a second. Hobart is more expensive and unaffordable to buy in than Brisbane right now, which is the third biggest market in Australia. You've got people like the Macquarie Bank coming out and saying that there'll be over 140,000 people moving out of Sydney and Melbourne in the next few years and into the Brisbane marketplace. You've got a market that has been flat for the last 10 years, while Sydney and Melbourne boomed in value in Perth back in the day. Brisbane just has sat flat and really done nothing and hasn't been the sweetheart of anybody since the last recession. And I think the next 7 years will look a lot more positive than the last. On top of that, we've just got this crazy amount of job growth. There were more jobs created in Queensland last year than New South Wales and Victoria. And then we've got this infrastructure boom. So between the Sunshine Coast, Brisbane and Gold Coast, there's $43 billion worth of infrastructure projects going in right now, with about 14 billion in the Goldie, about 12 billion in Brisbane and about 18 billion on the Sunshine Coast. And we're talking about airports, rail, schools, hospitals, shopping centres, train stations, under city rail, like all the good stuff that really drives strong job growth as well as strong population growth into a region. So from that perspective, building in Queensland right now, whether it's an investment or as your first property or as your family home, could really be an interesting idea. Now, the 10th and last thing that I wanted to finish on, which is the reason why you want to be building is so much fun, and it is so creative as a process as well. My wife and I have a huge passion for it, and I think, if you let yourself realize that it might be a bit stressful and uncomfortable, and you are going to learn new things as you go through it, and just try not to micromanage every single person around you, and focus on getting the right suburb, the right piece of land, the right design, the right price, and then just letting everybody do their thing. It can really be a fun process, creating something from nothing. Now, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I know there's so many different variables with building, but I love the fact that you can make short-term equity. I love the fact that you can get high rent returns from it, that you can get long-term capital growth and time the market right now. I love the depreciation benefits and all of the other things that I mentioned before. So if you're seriously considering building your own home up here, your first investment property up here, or an investment property up here, and would like to talk to someone who's helped do this over, $300 million worth of experiences is what we have in this marketplace between the Gold Coast, Brisbane and Sunshine Coast now, then I'd love you to jump over to my website, www.pumpedonproperty, and I'd love to talk about what your plans are. If it's nothing more than a conversation to educate you on the marketplace, that'd be great. Just book a free strategy session in over there, and we can talk about where you are and where you would like to go. Now, an example of this working the other day was, I'll give you two actually. I had a client in WA reach out to us saying, Ben, I've just bought this piece of land on the Sunshine Coast. I think I've made good equity on it. I've signed a contract to build a really nice 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom home. His contract price, it was a big home, was $480,000. And he sent it to me and I looked at it and I said, do you mind if I just reach out to my 2 builders that I work with up here and see if I can get you the same product, build at a better price? And he said, no worries. So within 24 hours, I was able to save him literally $80,000 on the cost of his build through my personal network. Another example of this working recently is a client came to me and said, I'm looking to buy a really good quality place in Brisbane, as close to the city as I can afford, but I want it to be walking distance to the beach. So I found a little off-market opportunity. There were 4 pieces of land that we picked up for 4 different clients. We bought that land at a really good price. We built a really, really nice owner-occupied home because this was in a suburb on the beach, close to the city, where people earn good money and expect beautiful product. And we built that beautiful 4-bedroom home for well under $230,000. Now that product is just being completed. All of them rented out in the first week because they were the right product, and it was in a suburb where there was no brand new homes for rent. It was an infill suburb on the beach. Those houses have just been revalued now. It's basically 12 months from start to finish for those clients because the land took a little while to get ready from the developer. And those houses have been revalued at $80,000 more than those clients paid for them. Now, that doesn't happen all the time, but if you can get the land at the right price, if you can get the timing right with the suburb, and you can get the right price build, there are huge opportunities to do really well in Southeast Queensland right now. So whether it's your own home and you're building like my wife and I have, whether it's investing or whether it's taking advantage of the first home builders grant up here at the moment, getting that free stamp duty and the nice big grant, we'd love to talk to you, learn more about your plans and what you're looking to do, and help you get your head around the marketplace, get the right piece of land, and go out there and actually introduce you to the right builder, get the design right, and project manage and support you through that entire process to make it as simple as possible, and make sure you come out with a great product that you and your family are proud of, that you can hold for the long term and make really good money from. So subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already done it. Really appreciate your time and attention on today's video, and can't wait to hear from you soon. If you're going out there and doing it on your own, I wish you all the best, And if you just need an introduction to a builder, just hit us up over at www.pumpedonproperty.com. More than happy to introduce you to some great builders that will save you a lot of money and build a much higher quality product for that price. So good luck and thank you so much.